It's Chris Rose with John Boy Media joining us now on the River Islands guest line and hopping on YouTube with us as well. So if you're part of the YouTube audience, you get to see Chris's handsome face. Chris, thank you for coming on. How you doing, bud?
Wow, obviously either you didn't put your contacts in or there's poor lighting or something.
I am.
Yeah, listen, back in the best damn days, Mark, I used to be like a 4.3 on a scale of 1 to 10. I've dipped to probably below a 2 at this point.
I think you're selling yourself short, but I'm an optimist by nature, Chris. So that's just kind of who I am. Unless, of course, we're talking about the Dodgers. Hey, before we get into the weeds of today and the Giants and all the things, like what we were just talking about, we could do the Dodger thing, but why do you think that the Tigers took it off for 2.5 days before the buzzer?
I don't necessarily know that. And we have not heard boo from Scott Harris, who's their president of baseball ops. So it's going to be a legitimate question. I think we all deserve an answer. And unfortunately, it has, because they jumped the gun perhaps a little early, that has now loaned itself to some credence of the tinfoil cap community that people are saying, well, they wanted him to go to the Dodgers. Like, what are we talking about? That sort of stuff drives me up a wall. You really think that the Detroit Tigers wanted to send Tarik Skubal to the Dodgers? Like, no, their job is to make the best trade. Get the best players that they want. Now, it's possible, though, that is the package that they like the most. And I always warn people when they say, well, they only got the Dodgers 5th, 7th, and prospects. Those are based on people who sit around and do this for a living. That doesn't make them true experts. And every organization sees their own prospects and other teams' prospects in different light. They might look at Zaire Hope and say, you know what? It says that he's the 5th best prospect. We've seen the rest of the guys in the Dodgers organization. We think he's the best prospect, so we'll take him. And that's the beauty of this whole trade deadline thing. I love the trade deadline and offseason trades so much more than free agency because you can focus on multiple teams having to make decisions instead of just one.
Chris, we want to talk to you about the move the Giants have made, but while we're on the Dodgers part of this and the Skubal part of it, what does this trade and we would imagine the ensuing gigantic contract extension that he's going to get from the Dodgers, what does this mean for baseball going forward?
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting because his agent, Scott Boras, has a habit of dragging out offseason negotiations. Now they're on the clock, right? We don't know what the next collective bargaining agreement is going to look like. I will bet an awful lot of money that there will not be a salary cap. I don't think that is the goal. That's what the league is saying. Hey, listen, the league's going to be much better off if we have a salary cap. I think that's merely posturing. I think that's trying to win the court of public opinion. They know damn well that the MLBPA is not going to go that direction. But what they're going to say is, all right, well, if it's not a salary cap, then you have to give up something. So they're just trying to chip away. That's why these these deals only last 5 years, whereas in the NFL, they can last upwards of like 11 years. And I've asked agents, why do they do that? They say because baseball wants to keep chipping away at what the PA has. And so this is just another opportunity. But circling back to what Skubal's all about, I think it's going to be fascinating to see if he can almost grandfather his deal in and take something from the Dodgers just in case they do something in the next CBA that would, I don't know if it's prevent him from maxing out, but make it even more difficult for other teams to get into his financial stratosphere.
Chris, I've seen some of your comments already online, so I know what your response would be to are the Dodgers bad for baseball? But let's talk about it less about the Dodgers label and just situationally. If you think there's going to be no salary cap, what are you saying to a fan of one of the teams that starts every year feeling like they've got no shot?
Oh, you mean like this team?
Right.
This is the alternate Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, I am from suburban Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm a lifelong Indians/Guardians, Browns, Cavs. Basically, I have a ton of scar tissue built up. It sucks. It sucks. It's an undescribable feeling that when you know you've got a good organization, and I'll just use my home team as an example, but I can also use the Brewers and I can use the Rays, that there is a very, very thin margin of error. And that is really accentuated by today's decision making, because teams like Milwaukee and Tampa Bay have to decide, do we mortgage a possible big-time future of prospects for what's going to inevitably be a 2 or 3 month rental? And yes, it will significantly improve our World Series or playoff, chances, whatever you want to say. But we know at the end of the day, he's going to walk, and he's going to end up in LA, or he's going to end up with the Mets, or he's going to end up with the Yankees or some other big market team. Is it worth it? And here's what I say. Hell yes, it is. Absolutely 100%. I'm telling you, in Cleveland in the late 90s, we had an amazing, amazing offensive team. Like one of the best over the last 50 or 60 years that they put together. And the pitching was okay, but there were always rumors of going after Randy Johnson. That didn't happen. Curt Schilling, that didn't happen. Pedro Martinez, that didn't happen. And I'm telling you, man, as a fan, I regret it that they didn't pull the trigger and give up some young players, and that could have included a young Bartolo Colon, a young 97 World Series hero in Jarrett Wright, a young Brian Giles. I think you got to pull the trigger. Now, back to the big picture. It does stink that there's a several $100 million disparity between the team that spends the most on their payroll and the least. And then, we could sit here and bitch and it all day, but if these are the rules we play by, sometimes when you're a lower revenue team or smaller market team, you got to take your chances and just say, screw it. This is how we're going to do it.
The Giants were pretty busy, Chris. They trade away 6 big leaguers. They get back 7 prospects, plus a major leaguer from Boston in Marcelo Mayer. I'm curious your thoughts on the Giants' deadline dealings in general. They keep their 3 big money infielders in Chapman, Adames, and Devers. Logan Webb stays a Giant as well, but almost everybody else that was rumored to potentially be on the move did get moved. What'd you think of what Buster Posey did?
I thought he did the right things. To me, it was practical. I can't say that he did a great job because so many of those guys we have no idea of what they're going to be like at the big league level. Meyer's the most interesting, obviously. I mean, that's why I'm screaming at the top of my lungs about prospects. If you go back to Boston's top 3 prospects at the beginning of the 2025 season, it was Roman Anthony, who got that $180 million extension we think is going to be really good, but he's missed basically the entire year. Then it was Christian Campbell, whom, if you remember, they gave him like a $50 or $60 million extension. He had barely played, and then they send him down, and he's on the side of a milk carton. I don't even know where he is. And then it was Meyer, who was number 3, and they were 3 of the top prospects in baseball, not just in the Red Sox organization, but in all of baseball. We're like, that is the next triumvirate. We're not touching him. Well, one's been traded, one's not heard from, and one's hurt. And so this is kind of my point about dealing for known. Now, as far as Meyer goes, certainly worthwhile. I don't know exactly where they're going to play him out the gate. I don't know if he fits at second. I just don't know. I would imagine that's where he ends up. I could be wrong. But it's probably good for him to get out of Boston where, you had heard rumors that maybe mentally he wasn't the right fit in Boston.
Chris Rose with us here. Grandy in for Dibs. Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. All right. Extension of the conversation about whether or not the Giants even could trade a big contract, an Adames, a Devers, or a Chapman. They don't. I imagine there may not have even been an opportunity to. But I'd love your opinion on this. If you sprinkle in the other stuff around them nicely, do you still think the Giants can be successful with those 3 guys on the roster?
Absolutely, I think. Yeah, I do. I think this is just one horrible day after another. I mean, I talked to somebody in the Giants organization during the break, and I was like, how you doing? And he goes, Chris, I can't believe it. Like, when I think it can't get any worse, I'm driving to work and I'm saying, no. It's not going to be worse than yesterday. And then he gets to work. It's worse. And I feel for because it has just gone all terribly, terribly wrong. But I do think that they can still bounce back from this. I really do. And call me ridiculous here, but I mean, look, Devers, I've told you this on this show before, that when he is right, he is a top 10 stick in this game. Chapman, still a really good defender and can hit the ball well enough. And Adames has had his moments in his almost now 2 years by the Bay, but they've been kind of fleeting. I still believe in him. I dig him as a guy. I think he's really important to what is built behind closed doors in a clubhouse, but it just hasn't worked out great. And they all haven't lived up to it on the field, and in some cases, maybe off the lines too, a little bit in how they've handled things.
Is it at all surprising, too, that it feels like the second wave of Buster's moves, obviously those first waves are re-signing Chapman, signing Adames, trading for Devers, and it feels like we're now entering maybe the second wave of Buster's tenure as the president of baseball operations. It's all been about pitching. Draft 4th overall, Jackson Flora, another pick in late in the first round as part of that Patrick Bailey trade with the Guardians, another pitcher. So many of these trades at the deadline, all pitching related. Does it surprise you at all that it seems like Buster Posey and the Giants, their influence has been towards starting pitching and pitching in general, which is what helped them win 3 championships when Posey was in his playing days?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's possible that 2012 lineup was really one of the worst World Series championship lineups that we've ever seen. I mean, certainly over the last 30 or 40 years, it just wasn't very good. And we were all sitting there saying, how the heck is this team again in the World Series? But, man, the pitching and their bullpen was phenomenal during those days. Just absolutely outstanding. I don't know of any franchise that has won 3 World Series in 5 different years and had 3 different guys standing on the mound at the time that they won it. But it just shows you the way that they ended up doing things with their starting pitching. They got creative. Obviously, Mad Bum in 2014 was out of his gourd good. You know, Sergio Romo took the reins when Wilson was down in 2012, and Willie was amazing in 2010. So, yeah, I think it's smart. Look, Buster's tenure, the minute he signed on to do this, I said, boy, this is risky. You're talking about one of the figureheads and great members of this organization over the last 50 or 60 years, right? He was beloved by everybody. But the minute you get in that hot seat, if you don't deliver, and it's been quite the opposite, it has been atrocious at best, people are going to take shots at you. So now we'll see if he can dig himself out of this hole that he's kind of built.
I mean, to that end, part of it is the decision he made in terms of the manager he hired. Chris, what do you hear around the game with regard to Tony Vitello and his viability going forward?
Not much since the first 6 or 7 weeks, when I think there was something so new and fascinating about him. I think the Giants have been so bad that people kind of have forgotten about him to some degree. And I think that's kind of telling. I mean, the Giants have always been a part of the tale of baseball since they got great again. And I think that's pretty damning just about the organization. But I think he's going to stick around. I think that he's going to want another shot at this. So unless they just say, hey, look, it ain't working, we got to go a totally different direction. I'm sorry about it, but it's not going to work out. Go back to the college game and go kick ass, because we know that you will. But I think if they gave him the option, Tony would say, hell yes, I want another shot at this.
How's Patrick Bailey doing out there, by the way?
Great. I'm telling you, dude, I wasn't thrilled about the trade because it was it wasn't so much Tugboat, although I like him and I'm rooting for him to do well.
Tugboat. I mean, how can you not like him? His name's Tugboat.
He was great the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was great in our system. And, I mean, for God's sakes, anybody that's in the early 20s and has a dad bod, I'm all in favor. Let's go. So I will always root for that kid. But I didn't love the idea of giving up the 29th pick as well for a guy. I was like, this team needs bats. And you guys probably don't see this, but the combination of he and Austin Hedges, we knew they were going to be great defensively, which they have been, and guiding this young staff to keep them in games. the two of them together have become like an offensive juggernaut. I can't believe it, but I'm really happy for Patrick Bailey. I finally will get a chance to see him in person when the Guardians are out here at the end of the month. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm happy that he's kind of found his direction.
Before you leave, who is the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns?
Oh, it's not Bernie Koshaw.
Chris, I don't know if you know, this is my favorite quote of the month so far. When Mary Kay Cabot came out last week, the general manager of the Browns was quoted as saying, "We feel confident that we will name a starting quarterback by week 1." I thought that was the quote of the year. I was like, that's awesome. They're going to do it before week 1, Chris.
Did they specify the season?
No, that's a good counterpoint. It's a very good counter question.
Well, I do call the Browns preseason games. And so I love it that when Todd Monken, their rookie 60-year-old head coach, came out and said over the weekend, yeah, we expect them to play, the starters to play in our preseason games. They have to. They don't know what the heck they're looking at. So I personally would like to see them go with Shedeur. Look, Watson's going to be done with them at the end of this season, so why not take a flyer? It's a huge risk, but they first-round picks next year. Most likely they're not going to be great this year, although I do think they actually have significantly more talent than people give them credit for. So they could find their quarterback in 2027, but I would give a shot to Shedeur because, my God, if you step in that and find it, then you could go totally different directions with those first-round picks next year and continue to build your team.
Feels like that's the way that it is indeed heading. Hey, man, we love it when you come on. Thank you so much for doing it today.